The Cardinals are coming off of a 3-game sweep of the Milwaukee Brewers, while the Reds are coming off of a 3-game series at home for the first time since they saw the Cardinals in Mexico. What's up, everybody? I'm Sarah Wellman. Welcome back to another series preview right here on Birdseeds. If you don't know, I cover the St. Louis Cardinals for birdsontheblack.com and create daily and weekly content that goes right here on this channel. Game recaps, series previews like this one, and more, all to keep you in the loop and entertained. Now, the Reds are coming into St. Louis for the first time this season. In fact, it will be the first time that the Reds and the Cardinals play at either home stadium, as the 2 games they have played so far took place in the Mexico series. But the Reds season has not gotten off to the start that they had hoped it would. And for the Cardinals, they've turned things around as of late. So this week from St. Louis, Matt Berger from 590 The Fan joins me to talk all things Cardinals as they welcome the Cincinnati Reds. Matt, thanks so much for joining me today. The Cardinals just wrapped up a sweep of the Milwaukee Brewers at home, which feels pretty good after all we went through in Milwaukee. How are you in light of that news?
Fantastic, because this was a very important series for the Cardinals against the Brewers, because we don't see the Brew Crew again, I think, until August.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if this is going to be like maybe I'm going to say a 3-team race. I'm not a big believer in the Pirates. I know they got a lot of young pitching. They're maybe an up-and-coming team, but I just don't see them being there in the long run. The Cubs, they're struggling, but the Cubs are going to be there. They're too talented, and we already know about Milwaukee. So the fact that they swept them, I think, is great. And this Milwaukee team, and especially Christian Yelich, their splits are not good. They're great at Miller Park. And you get them on the road, they're not that great. Same thing with Yelich, or as I like to call him, Athletic Pete Davidson. He's great at Miller Park, as we've seen it firsthand. But on the road, not so much. So a very important series. Glad they got the sweep. Very, very happy.
Yeah, I was really curious to see how things changed between these two teams when they were not at Miller Park, because the home runs were flying all over the place, and you sort of figured that wasn't going to be as prevalent at Busch Stadium, but I don't know, it felt really important to see how the Cardinals handled the Brewers outside of Miller Park, and I mean, I don't think you could ask for more than what we saw from them. I think before we look at the Reds series specifically, the Cardinals starting pitching is still concerning to me. I know we saw another strong start from Adam Wainwright, which is great to see, but it's you never know what the next start is going to be with Adam Wainwright. But the same thing can be said at this point for Dakota Hudson, for if Michael Wacha comes back, for even Jack Flaherty has been a bit of an enigma as far as what to expect from him. And we finally saw maybe the real Miles Michaelis, but it took a while to get there as well. So when you look at the Cardinals starting pitching coming out of this series, is there a place or a guy or a way that you feel like it's going to settle down? Because right now it just feels like it's kind of a crapshoot what you're going to get out of the starters right now.
You're right. I think a lot of it is their travel schedule has been weird. Yeah. You know, they've had a lot of home openers where you'll have the day off before the game, then you'll play the game, and then you'll have the day off after the game, and then you'll play 3. They had the 2-game stint in Mexico, which I really wasn't sure about. You know, it just seemed kind of weird, didn't it? Like, you're just down there, you play the Reds games in Monterrey, Mexico, and then you're back on the road again in Milwaukee. I mean, that probably was weird. And I think the weather has a lot to do with it, too, with some of these pitchers, you know. And I never really get too concerned about players until the weather starts to warm up. Because baseball it's a hot weather game. It's supposed to be played in warm weather. These players are used to warm weather, and then when it's kind of cool or cold, you're not sure exactly how they're really supposed to be, pitching. So, yeah, the starting rotation is a concern, but I'm not hitting the panic button yet where I'm like, oh, my God, we got to sign, Dallas Keuchel, or I know the
Wait, you're
Brewers.
Not? Because I thought that was the only response to any of this.
Yeah, to all of it. Panic. Yeah. I know that the Brewers, they signed Gio Gonzalez to a 1-year, $2 million deal today. So people wanting to bring up Reyes and, Seamart, he wants to come out of the bullpen, which surprised me yesterday when he admitted, no, I'd rather, come out of the bullpen. I mean, that's great, but we may need him to be a starter. So like right now, just kind of tread water, wait for the weather to get a little warmer, let the pitchers get a little more into the routine, and then, go from there.
I want to circle back to Carlos Martinez in a minute, but first to stay on the starters, Michael Wacha, the knee. Sounds like it's not something that's going to be a problem. However, when you think about Michael Wacha and the history there and the fact that it's his landing knee and that it seems to me like it's never not a problem for Michael Wacha.
And patella tendonitis is no joke. I mean, I'm glad that the training staff isn't concerned about it, but I've had concerns about the Cardinals training staff in the past and their ability to diagnose certain ailments. But we've seen here what patella tendonitis has done. Like, that's pretty much what ended Mark McGwire's career, was patella tendonitis. I had a friend who was actually drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies. This was a long time ago, but he was in the Phillies organization. He was a middle infielder and developed patella tendonitis, and he couldn't run out those infield singles anymore and be able to get to those balls in the hole. So patella tendonitis, I mean, I'm not here to basically RIP Michael Wacha's career. But to me, it is a concern. And you mentioned it already before about his shoulder. I mean, like, when is Michael Wacha not injured? That's why I've never been a huge believer in him. He seems like he's a great guy, and when he's on, he's on. But the problem is that he's not always on, and the best ability in baseball or any sport is your availability.
Yeah. And I'm always concerned about that with Wacha. That's why I always kind of feel like anything they get from him is bonus, because you never know when it's going to go away. But you better have a solid backup plan in place for whenever he's not available anymore. I'm not really sure what that backup plan is as of this point. Ponce de Leon came up and did a fine job. I'm not sure if that's the long-term solution. But he did a great job when he was there. I think in theory it would have been Carlos Martinez, right? But now we're hearing that he's going to be coming out of the bullpen, or Reyes, who is now in the starting rotation in Memphis. So that's still sort of on the table, I guess, at some point. But for Carlos, it's the bullpen, at least for the foreseeable future. And he seems like that's where he's comfortable. It seems like that's where the team feels like he can be the most successful. It still all feels a little confusing to me as far as how they've arrived at that conclusion, but that's where it is. And I guess that kind of changes the conversation about the starting possibilities when you put Carlos Martinez back into the bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, like, starting pitching, we always figured that starting pitching was going to be the strength of this organization, or going into the season. And so far, if you're going to complain about it, it's been the weakest part. The bullpen's been pretty good. Bullpen started out shaky. Bullpen started to round into form. Andrew Miller's looking good. Gant has been fantastic. So yeah, like I said, I'm not going to be too concerned about them until the weather starts warming up. We'll start seeing some 80, 85, 90-degree days. And, the body stays warm after you've warmed up and you're on the mound. You have to worry about running to the dugout and putting on the jacket and all that other different stuff. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope there's going to be no more, patella tendonitis for anybody else, no more other injuries. Let's hope Wainwright, by the miracle of God, is finding some way to still be able to be effective. But, you got to be concerned about the starting pitching.
I've been on your podcast a couple of times. We always end up talking about Adam Wainwright, so I had to bring it up because I have been, I don't know, maybe less inclined to write him off than others have been, because I felt like the possibility of him being healthy was going to tell the real story. Now, the concern is always, is he healthy? Can he stay healthy for me? But we've seen a little bit of vintage Wainwright a couple of times. It's still in there. It's kind of just hard at this point to see how it can be there every 5 days. And that's, I think, where the concern still is. But man, it's cool to see when it's still there.
That's the whole point. I'm not saying that Wainwright can't do it anymore. He just can't do it on a consistent level.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point. I mean, all the injuries that he's had, and he's closing in on 40. Was he like 36, 37 years old? And he's had the Achilles problem. He's had the Tommy John surgery. He's had, about everything that you can think of. To paraphrase the great Charles Barkley, old people don't get healthy, they die. So, I mean, to expect that Wainwright suddenly is going to be look like the Wainwright of 5-10 years ago, it's just not happening. And I don't hate people think I hate Adam Wainwright. You'd be out of your mind to hate Adam Wainwright. He might be the most likable player on the Cardinal organization, and one day he's going to have that red jacket on. He's going to be a Cardinal Hall of Famer. He's going to be in that Ford convertible on the parade at Busch Stadium for opening day. He's not going anywhere. The point is, another aggravation I have with Adam Wainwright is that every single start, everything that he does takes away from the development of someone younger like a Dakota Hudson or like an Anthony Reyes or someone else in the organization that is the future of the starting rotation and not Adam Wainwright.
Yeah. Well, Dakota Hudson, I think, has a lot of work yet to do, which we've seen. He'll get a start in this Reds series. He concerns me a little bit, and I think it's because there've just been, and you know what, he's young. You're going to see some of this from some of those young guys, but he sort of looks like a deer in the headlights sometimes when things aren't going his way, and it's like there's no understanding of how to fix it in the moment, and that's what the best starters do. So we've seen his potential. It's all there. It's just being able to sort of manipulate it and find it midway through an outing when it's not there to start with. That's what I don't think we've seen yet from Hudson.
No, and we haven't. And I mean, who knows? We may never see. He may be someone like Carlos Martinez, where he was in the bullpen last year, and maybe he got a little like, know what, this bullpen's not that bad. I could hang out here. I don't have to worry about having to go 5-6 innings. I don't have to worry about maybe going 1 or 2. So there could be something to that as well. But the starting pitching for the Cardinals, like we've been talking for the past couple minutes, it is a concern. Dakota Hudson is a concern. Wainwright, we got our fingers crossed that the baling wire and the duct tape was going to hold it together for I don't know how many starts. But Anthony Reyes could not get up here, or Alex Reyes. I always want to say Anthony Reyes. Alex Reyes. Yeah. Alex Reyes cannot get here soon enough and cannot get in this rotation soon enough. Well, I'm looking forward to where it's going to be Miles Michaelis, Jack Flaherty, and then Reyes as the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's an exciting trio for sure. We will see Miles Michaelis and Jack Flaherty in this Red Series. Michaelis, of course, finally being a starter to get past that 7-inning mark. He pitched 8 innings in his last outing. Jack Flaherty kind of righted the ship after a rough appearance in his last outing as well. So we'll see those guys. They'll go up against, it'll be Michaelis up against DeSclafani for the Reds, Trevor Mahle versus Dakota Hudson, Sonny Gray versus Jack Flaherty. Sonny Gray is an interesting story for me. Another guy that has been phenomenal, has had some rough moments, but looks like he may sort of be back on track, which might be a problem for the Cardinals, but it's good for a baseball story, I think, to watch Sonny Gray this year.
Yeah, and like some people, they just can't handle playing in New York.
Yeah.
It takes a special animal to play in New York City, You go
like
from
Luke
someplace,
Voigt, for example. You have to be like Luke Voigt.
You have to be what?
Like Luke Voigt.
Absolutely.
New York.
People get to New York and they're like, they love the bright lights, the big city, and they just take off. And other people, they get there and you're surrounded by all those skyscrapers. The media is very intense out there. I mean, you've got how many different sports talk radio stations, and you've got how many different newspapers and TV stations. You got the media, picking every single little thing that you say. Some people can't handle that. Some people are better suited for a smaller market, and maybe that's what we're seeing with Sonny Gray.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm curious to see that matchup between him and Jack Flaherty. Flaherty's given up more home runs than I think we would like to see from him at this point. But again, he's a guy that. What's that?
I said the whole pitching staff has been like that.
That's true. Yeah, the 4 home runs a game thing that was happening this week that's not sustainable. No. So they should probably figure out how to stop that. However, when the offense is firing on all cylinders like it is for the Cardinals right now, you can kind of get away with that, I suppose, for a little while. The outfield for the Cardinals right now, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, it looked like Dexter Fowler and Marcell Ozuna were going to be the death of this team, and now they're carrying it. I mean, I don't remember a more impressive turnaround from multiple guys in the same time frame as far back as I can. I mean, Matt Carpenter sort of did it last year, but this was even quicker than that.
And you and I have been probably Dexter Fowler's biggest defenders on Twitter, especially last season, where I mean, it was hot take after hot take about how Dexter Fowler, he's lazy, quits, and all this other different BS that people really have no idea what they're talking about when they say that. You don't get to that level of professional sports by being lazy or by quitting or anything like that. People don't realize that. And I mean, and then you have, everybody's favorite Harrison Bader, who was playing right next to him. And Bader, yeah, he's fast. He's the fastest guy on the team. He's 25. He's going to be fast. I'd love to see him and Colton Wong do a foot race. I think it'd be pretty entertaining about who would be the fastest player on the Cardinals team. But I'm so happy, thrilled for Dexter that he is, it looks like he's riding the ship. He's having fun playing baseball again. I'm a little surprised that Mike Shildt has kept him that far down in the batting order and not bumped him up to at least 2. Because right now, I think Goldschmidt batting second. Okay, we've done that. I wasn't a fan of it to begin with. I'm still not a fan of it. Right now, I think I would put Dexter number 2 and then just bump everybody down 1. Because Dexter's power numbers, until this series against the Reds, his power numbers were not good. He didn't have 1 home run, I think maybe 1 or 2 runs driven in. But his batting average was creeping up there, and his on-base percentage was pretty good. So why not have him bat second and have him get on base and have him sitting there for Goldschmidt and DeYoung and Ozuna to drive in? So I'm still kind of puzzled that Shildt has kept, Dexter Fowler, was he batting now 7th? And that's where he's kind of kept him. I'm kind of surprised he hasn't moved him up just to see what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, when I sort of drew up what I would hope that this lineup would look like before the season started, that's what I would have done. I would have had, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have Matt Carpenter batting leadoff.
Now, yeah,
Fowler would be leading off, Matt Carpenter would be second, Goldie would be third. But it's not a perfect world. So in a realistic scenario.
Come on now. Carpenter could only bat leadoff.
That's what Twitter tells me, and Twitter's never wrong. So no, but I would have been perfectly happy to see Dexter Fowler sort of rebound to what he was 2 years ago and be that guy that can be in the 2 spot, move Goldie down a bit. But I think someone mentioned it to me in regards to Colton Wong and why he was still batting so low in the order, and I think it might sort of apply to Dexter Fowler as well. Is that to some degree, there's a comfort level there now. They've established who they are, what their role is, where they're finding success. So maybe if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as long as other pieces are doing, what they are supposed to do as well.
Hey, right now the team is winning. So, I mean, it's kind of like maybe that's the best approach right now, was to not, laissez-faire approach to the batting order. But I'll tell you what, here comes my hot take. Are you ready for my scorching hot take?
I'm ready.
The outfield that we saw the past few days with Ozuna in left and Fowler in center and Martinez in right, I'm okay with that being the starting outfielder for the foreseeable future. I know everybody loves Bader, and he's a great defensive player. He's questionable at the plate. He's okay. He still needs to learn how to draw some walks and but he's a young player. But the way that those 3 are hitting right now, especially Martinez, you've got to find a way to get Martinez into that lineup. I know that he's an adventure in right field, and Marcell Ozuna is the funniest thing on TV going right now in left field. I want every ball hit to him. I'm not lying when I say that. He's spinning around out there like Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music in the hills of Austria looking for the ball lights. It cracks me up. I know I shouldn't be saying that. I should want him to be professional and catch everything that's hit to him. But come on, it's funny. It's funny. But the way those 3 are hitting right now, what we were just talking about, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And those 3 are hitting the hell out of the ball. So I would almost say, you know what, until the foreseeable future, this is the starting lineup. And that way you got O'Neill, you got Bader to be defensive replacements at the end of the game.
Yeah, I'll be really curious to see how quickly they go back to Bader as the everyday center fielder, because, I mean, look, he makes plays in center field that nobody else on the roster can make. So There is that. But he also isn't hitting. And while you can get away with that at times over the course of a season, I don't know, it's really hard to break up what's going on out there right now. Honestly, here's my hot take in relation to this. I know that Dexter Fowler's slow and lazy and whatever, but according to Twitter. But He looks so much more comfortable in center field than he does in right. He tracks fly balls better. He covers ground better. It's like he's just suddenly so much more familiar with his surroundings. And I don't know. I felt like he played better defensively this week when he was shifted over to center than he has ever since he moved to right. So that's my hot take. I don't think it'll stay that way, but I'm not mad about it if it does.
I mean, he's played how many years in Major League Baseball as a center fielder? So, yeah, I would imagine him going back to center field was like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Or, putting on, it probably felt like putting on a pair, like whenever you go bowling and you take off those bowling shoes and you put on the shoes you got on before and you're like, oh, my God, this feels so good. It could have been like that. And maybe that's why we're seeing this resurgence at the plate as well. And here we should be exchanging hot takes here. So here's my other hot take. I think you'll agree with me on this one. I'm fully on board right now with re-signing Marcell Ozuna.
Interesting.
I'm fully on board with it right now. Yes, he is an adventure in left field. And I know the Cardinals, they have all these different outfielding prospects. But God knows if any of them are going to turn out. Because, it wasn't that long ago we thought that the outfield of the future was going to be, Jason Hayward, Steven Piscotty, and Randall Grichuk. And, those three, none of them are wearing a Cardinal uniform right now. Yeah. So just because you think you got these prospects and just because you think these prospects are going to do well, it doesn't mean that they're going to. Right now, Marcell Ozuna, he's kind of proven himself, at least at the plate. And he's done it. He's been a Major League Baseball player for I don't know how many years. He's awful in left field. And maybe, Uncle Willie can work with him on that. But if the Cardinals were to re-sign Marcell Ozuna, I would not be upset.
It's interesting. I've been very much convinced that the Cardinals were not going to be interested in re-signing Marcell Ozuna because it felt like as much as they tried to make him a fit last year, it just wasn't a fit. And the way that things started this year, plus sort of the weird tension over the offseason with the shoulder and his readiness at spring training, it just felt very strange. So I guess maybe I'm a little not quite ready to dive into the let's go in long-term on Marcell Ozuna, but
I don't think there's any way at all they do re-sign him. This is the St. Louis Cardinals we're talking about.
And it's a Scott Boras client.
Yeah, and they're so fanning themselves over all the money they just spent on Paul Goldschmidt. And I like the Goldschmidt contract. I think he's worth every penny of it. But, they're probably still, biting their fingernails that they spent that much money on Paul Goldschmidt. So I have no delusions at all that they're going to re-sign Marcell Ozuna. I'm just saying that I think they should.
Yeah, which is fair. It's been remarkable to see how he's changed the dynamic of this lineup. It went from being a almost sure out to all of a sudden, I like Marcell Ozuna in any situation that he happens to come up in. And it's not just, if there's no pressure and he can hit a 2-run jack that doesn't mean anything. But, if the game's on the line, he's one of the guys that I want to come up to the plate right now. And that's a huge shift in a short amount of time.
Either him or DeYoung, the way DeYoung's been swinging that too. He must be really seeing the ball well because DeYoung is just, and he's hitting it to all areas of the field as well. He and Ozuna both, so they've been incredible.
I was worried about having those two back-to-back in the lineup. I think right now it's working well in both of their favors because of how each of them is hitting and the fact that Goldie's turning it on a little bit with Molina behind those guys. There's not an easy out in the lineup right now, and that's how this lineup was built to exist, but we haven't seen it look like that in a really long time.
So far, I would say that I was really hesitant to say that the Cardinals were going to win the division. The reason why is that to me, they were just too many questions when it came to the lineup. You kind of knew what you were going to get with Paul Goldschmidt because he's a pretty much a perennial MVP candidate.
He has a bit of a track record.
Yeah, a pretty good track record. But you were worried about Fowler. How's Fowler going to do? Is Fowler going to completely implode again like he did last year? Marcell Ozuna, is it going to take him forever to get back going like he did last year? DeYoung, another young player that he was great. Or not great, but he was good, and they signed with that extension, but you have no idea how he's going to pan out. He's someone who doesn't have that much of a track record. So for me, like going into the season, there were so many questions in this lineup, but you have to say that the past, week and a half, those questions have been answered.
Yeah, we'll see if that continues. Starting with this Red series, I expected the Reds to at least be competitive in 2019. So far, not so much. Since the Cardinals saw them in Mexico, they have yet to score 30 runs in 2+ series since the Cardinals have seen them. Meanwhile, the Cardinals have scored 50+ runs in the same amount of time. Matt Kemp is now on the IL with a broken rib. They have, here's the thing, the Reds offense finally climbed above the 200 mark as a team batting average, but it's the worst in baseball. Their offense that was supposed to be this turnaround for them, the source of their intrigue this season, has been awful, and there's no real end in sight to that. I mean, even Joey Votto has not been spectacular. Here's a fun thing before we go too far down this rabbit hole. First time in his career that he popped out to first base this week. Also, right. How does that never happen? Also, his first career leadoff home run, like the next day. So when you've been in the game as long as Joey Votto has, and you can still pick up first like that, I don't know, you're doing something right.
He's a good player. He's won an MVP. He's been around for a long time. He is the face of that Cincinnati Reds franchise. So I'm with you there. Yeah, their offense has been surprising. When you're talking about Joey Votto and another person that the Cardinal fans, the BFIB, they can't stand him. I personally love the guy, and that's Yasiel Puig. Puig is my friend. I love Puig. I just think he's fun. I mean, because I'm not a baseball purist. I don't lose my bleep whenever someone misses the cutoff man like Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own. I understand fundamentally it's what you're supposed to do. I played baseball my entire life. I understand the game. I don't lose my mind if someone does that. I mean, maybe if he was on my team and he was costing my team runs, I'd have a different, view on that. But Puig, I think a lot of the players are just having a little bit of a time of adjustment period, in a new market, in a new stadium, new teammates, new surroundings. I mean, we go from LA to Cincinnati. That's the
culture shock.
A little bit of a culture shock. And so far, it seems like the fans in Cincinnati have kind of taken to Puig. I think when they had that brawl against the Pirates and he was going to, take on the entire team, I think Cincinnati, we know how much they love their fighters in Cincinnati when they had Johnny Cueto and the whole thing with Jason LaRue. So I think when he did that, he kind of won that Cincinnati fan base over. So they're not a team that I'm worried about at any stretch of the imagination. For some reason, they seem to kind of have the Cardinals number every year when they're terrible, and they play the Cardinals and they'll win 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3 out of nowhere. But this coming series, I'm expecting more of the same.
Yeah, the Red series, to me, no matter what time of the year it comes or how many times we've seen them already, it feels like one of those that you kind of classify as a trap game. This is a series that you have no business losing, but you also probably had no business sweeping the Brewers, so who knows what's going to happen.
And maybe if they've been hey, you know what, we swept the Brewers, there could be a little bit of an exhale where they're oh, thank God we needed to win the series. We swept them. Hey, we can kind of kick our feet up against against a hapless team like the Reds, and then they come in and they win 2 out of 3, and next thing you know, you never know what something like that could to lead to. So, but what we talked about, this Reds pitching staff, the pitching staff is meh. The lineup is surprisingly bad. Weekend series or kind of a midweek series with the Cardinals. Yeah, I'm not too worried about them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading some about the Reds, and in talking to Wick Terrell, who did the preview before the Mexico series, the Reds fan base always kind of feels like if we could just have league average pitching, we'll be fine, because this is a place where you can score a lot of runs. Well, they kind of have league average pitching right now, and it's the offense that's just non-existent that has been just absolute torture for them so far.
It could be one of those things where, I was talking about earlier, where they're waiting for the weather to kind of warm up and the bodies to kind of warm up and get back into the grind of things too. So that could be part of it as well. But it's kind of sad to see what's happening in Cincinnati. Such a great a baseball city with a rich baseball history, with a big red machine going back in the 70s, and having some pretty good teams in the 80s and the 90s. So, but yeah, but I mean, their misfortune is our gain as Cardinal fans. But it is kind of sad to see a good baseball city like Cincinnati be in the doldrums for as long as they have been.
And it's got to be tough to maybe have a little bit of hope for this season and then to be off to the start that they are. Obviously, you know, we haven't even completed April yet, so there's time for dramatic things to change. But right now it looks like the Reds are maybe not quite what everyone hoped they would be after all the moves that they made. However, we will, like I said, see Sonny Gray. We will see Tyler Mahle. Anthony DeSclafani has actually been their worst starter so far, so maybe that matchup for the Cardinals will work in their favor, although they have a tendency to struggle against the guys who are struggling and be fine against the, you know, Noah Syndergaards of the league. So again, we'll see how that all shakes out.
It's always nonsensical.
Yeah.
If you're playing the St. Louis Cardinals and you have to win this game, let's say for some reason it meant like the release of hostages, and your team has to win a game against the St. Louis Cardinals, bring up a soft tossing left-hander and you are going to win that game. He may even pitch a no-hitter.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Soft tossing lefty with like an 8+ ERA and good to go.
It has been like that with the Cardinals for as long as I can remember. It makes no sense.
You would think someone would have been able to figure that out over the years at some point.
If you're the Cubs or the Brewers, why don't you just go out and get a bunch of soft tossing left-handers and then just sit on top of the NL Central for as long as you can?
Oh man, it's one of the more bizarre trends that I don't know how it keeps happening. But every time you think, okay, this isn't really a real thing, and then it happens again, and you're like, no, it's very real. It's very much a real thing.
Here's another thing with the Cincinnati Reds. I always think about this, like a team like the Reds and something like the Royals and some of these other teams that are really, really bad. If you work in that ticket office, how the hell do you sell season tickets?
Yeah.
Like, what do?
I mean, look at the stands.
I guess you kind of week and hey, we got Yasiel Puig and we got Matt Kemp, and maybe they'll be what they did in LA, maybe they'll do here in Cincinnati. So maybe there's that, but man, that's got to be a tough sell.
Yeah, not an easy day at the office, to be sure.
No,
but they will come into St. Louis for the first time this weekend. It's always a bit of a unique challenge. And of course, having just seen them for that 2-game series in Mexico, it feels almost like this is the first series of I don't know, maybe it's just because we haven't seen either of these two teams in their home ballpark, so it feels a little bit different. There's not going to be the fanfare. There's not going to be the added expectations or excitement of the Mexico series. So we'll see what happens this weekend. But Matt, I appreciate you taking your time this afternoon, and we'll see what happens.
It's been a pleasure. It's good hearing you and seeing you again. And anytime you want me to come on, you know how to get a hold of me.
Sounds good. We'll have to maybe do it again when, the Reds are more interesting to talk about. Or just find another team.
How about another team? How about a team that's a little more interesting than the Reds? Thank you, Tara, for inviting me on to talk about the stinking Reds.
Hey, man, somebody has to talk about the Reds. If I have to talk about the Reds, somebody else has to talk about them.
There you go.
One more quick note on the Reds pitching before I wrap all of this up. It is, in fact, their pitching that has been keeping them at least somewhat relevant. They currently have the 6th best ERA as a starting rotation, 3rd best as a bullpen. That's actually just ahead of the relief corps for the St. Louis Cardinals, of course led right now by John Gant and Jordan Hicks, along with Mr. John Brebbia. Don't want to leave him out. So it is the pitching that is keeping the Reds in close games. It's the hitting, or the lack thereof, that is taking them out. But they are playing close games. We'll see if that trend continues this weekend in St. Louis. We'll see if the Cardinals can continue their winning streak, which currently stands at 5. Once again, it'll be Anthony DeSclafani versus Miles Michaelis in Game 1. It will be Trevor Mahle versus Dakota Hudson in Game 2, and Sonny Gray versus Jack Flaherty in Game 3. I will be back right here on Birdseeds to recap it all on About Last Night. I will link to the About Last Night playlist so you can catch up if you haven't. Make sure that you're following Matt Berger and send him all of your commentary on Adam Wainwright. I'm just kidding, but maybe only sort of. You can hear Matt on 590 The Fan in St. Louis. Thanks again to him for joining me. I think that just about does it. So I'm Tara Wellman, and I'll see you next time.